on you, I apologize ahead of time. Okay, what we're here for is present to the residents a program action plan for addressing the gas in the community. What we've done, we've had a workshop over the last 2 days. We finished last night. It was a very successful workshop where we got all the interested parties in the room and talked about what can be done to mitigate gas in the community right now. We had a very open and honest exchange, and out of that, from all the interested parties, DNR, Texas Brine, CB&I, Tetra Tech, Walker Hill, DQ was on the phone. Everybody who has a stake in this was there, and we came out with consensus on the best approach to address gas in the community. What I'm going to do tonight is roll that plan out to you and take your questions. This plan is now almost 24 hours old, so we haven't got all the details, but we do have a program action plan. Workshop was pulled together to try to solve the problem. And why did everybody have to get together? The reason is, as I've told you before, it's a complex problem. There's a lot of smart people working on it, and it works better to have us all in the room trying to pull in one direction than everybody pulling their own direction. And that was the impetus behind it, is to fix the problem for the community. So nobody's interest at this point to throw rocks at each other, look backwards, forward, whatever. We are looking forward, and that's what I'm going to present tonight. As this is rolled out, you're going to see action in the community. There's a lot of stuff. We're going to have to design things, install things, but here we go. When we assembled in the workshop, we set out 4 goals. The first goal was to delineate the gas that can be addressed in the community in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Doesn't mean it's all gone. That means we're getting a program in place to reduce the risk to the residents of the community. And we came up with that. We determined an overall approach on how to mitigate the gas in the community. I'm going to show you what we've got so far on that tonight. We looked at well spacing, how many wells are needed, and then we looked at final observations of the well design. These are kind of technical. I won't bore you with the details on those tonight, but we spent a lot of time going through this. And what we've come up with is a 2-phase program. The first phase is to control the shallow gas. Now, Deborah, if you'll pull the one up with the houses on it. Not that one. That's got the bubbles. One with the houses. What we've got below the community, and I'll show you here in a minute how much gas we got. There's a lot of gas below the community, especially South Highway 70, and we have to deal with it. But to mitigate the gas down here is going to take some time, and to mitigate the gas down here so you no longer have gas coming up into the homes or around the homes is going to take a long time, months at least, maybe longer. But what we've got below the community, and it's been defined with all the CPT and everything you've seen around here, you've seen the trucks, you've seen the MIHPT, a lot of investigations gone on in the community. We've got a map here that shows all the points. I'm not going to belabor that. But what we've got is a fine-grained sand that's down between 20 and 40 feet. And that is continuous more or less across the community. It isn't under everywhere, but it doesn't need to be to accomplish what we want to do. So what we're going to do, instead of just focusing down here, and we're going to focus down here, what we're going to do is install shallow systems across the community. And we are going to start off with 4 systems because that's what we can get in place. We're going to use the data from those 4 to to roll this across the community. We are addressing north, south, east, west to get this gas intercepted below the entire community. But we are starting with 4 to get some key data we need for design. And what we're going to do is intercept this gas in this shallow sand with vacuum units, and I'll show you pictures of them here in a minute. These are not big units. We're very tuned into the aesthetics, and you've got to live with them. It's got to be so I would live next to it, okay? My grandkids would live next to it. That's my benchmark. We're going to intercept that gas through a bunch of shallow wells, pull it into a vacuum extraction system, and we'll show you the results of the test that was conducted on the Texas brine property. People are very sensitive. We don't want a lot of testing in the community. This was not done in the community. It was done over on Texas brine property. Excellent results. I'll show you pictures here in a minute. But we're going to intercept the gas here across the community, and I just showed a schematic here that would actually cover the whole community. Intercept this gas so it's not coming to the surface anymore. What that's going to do is the subslab systems, we won't go into that in detail. Subslab systems have some positives, but they got a lot of negatives. This addresses the whole community. It doesn't matter if your house on grade, if you got skirts around your trailer, whatever. We're going to hit the gas and get it here, get it out of the way. It'll be treated away from the community. We're not putting flares up in the community. Heard you there. And they may be thermal oxidizers, which is essentially a way to get rid of the gas without a flame. Okay, but that's what we're working on. So we're going to intercept the gas. While this is going on, there will be additional wells installed down here in the deep gas. I'm going to show you in here in a few minutes to get at this gas, but we're also implementing a change program there to be able to put fewer wells in and hopefully get the gas out faster. The second piece of this, though, which is here, this is the first piece, shallow system, moving as fast as we can. This one down here is going to take a little longer, and we've got to finish a few tests that are ongoing right now before I can tell you exactly how many wells we've got. But the group went ahead and said, you know, we think based on what we've seen, here's where wells would logically go. So with that, Deborah, let's go to the dual phase test. Just tuck that one away. This, Peter, where are you? Peter, right here. He's hiding in the back. Peter, stick your head out. I think most people know you. This is Peter Smith with Respec. He's been running the dual phase test on the Texas brine property, and he's done a really good job instrumenting it. Got excellent data. Pilot test, they ran for 219 hours. It was shut down just a few days ago. They removed about 7 pounds an hour of methane, which is equivalent to about 4,000 cubic feet per day. So in terms of a vent well, this would be a not too bad performer, but not really great. But these were out of 2 wells in this shallow sand. Okay? And they were, Peter, what were they? 35 feet deep, 30 feet deep, something like that?
Yeah, 30.
Okay? So he was able to get that out of 2 wells with this system. So the next one, yeah, pictures. Proof is in the pudding. People don't. We can show you lots of numbers, and we're going to leave these here so you can look at them. Prior to the test, this is bubble site 26. We call her Stephanie. We named her because she started as a little girl, and now she's a great big girl. And Stephanie has some sisters. She's got Stephanie and then 4 or 5 sisters around her. Big bubble site now. It started off, it literally was less than a foot across, and now it's many feet. Here it is bubbling before the test started. On September 6th, just before it was shut down, no bubbles. They were gone. And actually the bubbles stopped, Peter, about 3 or 4 days into the test.
Yeah, they were diminishing gradually. There was an immediate response after one day. They were gone within 1 week, and then we ran it for a couple more days.
Right. They're gone. That's pretty much visual proof. I can show you numbers. The downside of this is, as soon as he shut it off, within a few hours, Stephanie was back. What that means is this interim system has got to be maintained operational. You can't just turn it on, 2 weeks later you get it turned off. You got to put it in so it's there for the long haul while we deal with the DPVE. And that's what we wanted to see. There's enough gas coming up from below that Stephanie recovered. She started bubbling again 90 minutes later. But that just tells us, okay, we got to design a system for the long haul to intercept the gas. We've got to put in the infrastructure, the power, and the pumps and everything have got to be designed to run long term. It's not, I come in today and it's fixed tomorrow. I wish it was, but this is going to make it a whole lot safer in and around your homes because we're getting the gas before it gets to the surface. This is what the equipment looked like.
We can't see the board.
Can't see the board anymore. Thank y'all.
We'll leave it here, but this is what the equipment looked like. It's not a big footprint, but it's not a tiny one either because you got to have some power to do what we're doing. I'll show you the trailers we're talking about for the initial test here in a few. It's not a huge, monstrous unit. This would be put behind a proper enclosure so you don't see the equipment, etc. In addition, it will be set up so the noise, these are vacuum pumps, and the plant people know vacuum pumps can be noisy.
What kind of noise are you talking about?
Thank you.
What kind of noise are you talking
Now,
about?
I'm telling you, the noise, they will be put in sound, not soundproof, but sound abatement enclosures, so all you're gonna hear, Peter, I think you might hear a little bit of a hum.
I was going to say, I was there and it was a hum. Incidentally, I was there when it had been operating about 42 hours. I had seen, what do you call her, Stephanie, when she was in her glory, and she was almost totally gone in 48 hours.
Like I told you, the soundproofing and the sound abatement, it has to be such that I would live next to it, okay? And there's ways to do it. We've done it at a bunch of sites across the country where we put these in Walmarts, where we put them in gas stations, etc. That's an engineering issue. Keep the noise down.
How many of those are you planning on putting in?
I can't tell you how many because we've got to get the design, the data from the first 4 tests.
If the sound is a little bit too loud, you can come back and re-engineer the soundproofing.
Yeah, I mean, there's sound walls and enclosures and all that kind of stuff, but sound is very important to us. In addition, how many we need depends on the infrastructure, because the good thing is, where's the one with the house?
But you can actually put them on only the property that Texas Bryant owns so far.
Yeah,
In the
and what you
subdivision.
can do with the vacuum system and run bigger lines, you vary, all the lines are gonna be varied. We're in like 6-inch vacuum header lines, they call them, and then you just hook your wells up to that, okay? So you can run these vacuum lines. I've got a system in Albuquerque that's bigger than this, physical footprint, but we're running the vacuum lines about 2,500 to 3,000 feet. So you don't have to have one on every corner, that's what I'm trying to tell you. But the first ones, we're bringing in smaller units while we collect the data so we can engineer a permanent solution. And the engineering here has to be designed, assuming it's permanent. I hope we have everything fixed in a year, but it's got to be designed to run long term. Okay, Deborah. Yes. This is what one of these trailers is going to look like. They're a double axle trailer. They close the doors, and I have not seen this physical unit, but these are designed to not be noisy at all. Okay, and so they put them in a trailer, and you'll see this, and there will be proper enclosures. We don't want to make a nuisance in the community at
Really?
So, that's what the small units will look like. The big unit, I can't tell you because we need to design it. So Deborah, if you'll, not that one, but
What?
Houses they buy.
They can potentially, they can potentially put it in dangerous.
okay.
In his house.
The area we intend to cover, purple line here plus over here.
In the house.
I just didn't around, but we haven't forgot about the people in Grand Bayou at all. It's just to be able to see things, I blew this up a bit. What we're talking, and these will be moved around based on logistics, we're talking 4 of them, and we're focusing where we know we have gas problem right now. Up here on Crawfish Stew, we've got 2 on Sausage and 1 south of Highway 70. These will be the ones where a number of wells will go in, bring in the trailer mounted unit or a skid unit, whatever is available, and run these so we can get the data so we can see how many wells we need and how far apart the wells need to be to cover the community. The goal, we don't know exactly where gas is coming up, or where it's gonna come up tomorrow, and so you can't just pick and choose, you pretty much have to cover the community. Yeah. And we've got a lot of good data showing us where the gas is now, and everything else. So this is what shallow first phase, well, this is being put in, what Texas Brine's gonna do. They'll bring in a back truck, and we can actually test the wells as they go in with the back truck, where they'll pull a vacuum with the back truck, and they'll actually be able to test the wells as we go. So you don't have to wait until all the wells are in, and then you gotta get the blowers in and everything else. They'll be testing as they go with the back truck. And it'll be a Walker Hill back truck, I believe. And Walker Hill has been here pretty much from day 1. So anyway, they'll be testing the wells. The intent is, though, even on these, the wells are probably gonna be subgrade. In other words, you're not gonna see a lot of pipes coming out of the ground. You're gonna see manholes about that big. We do this a lot for gas stations and stuff. You don't want wells sticking up all over the place. So you subgrade them, and the pipes, we talked, they'll probably be put in with horizontal bores, just pipeline, standard pipeline stuff. So on the surface, you're not seeing a lot of stuff, because I said, this has to be installed assuming it runs for a long time. Can't hook it up today and it's gone tomorrow. That's not what we're looking at. Everybody in this room knows that better than anybody. That's the shallow system. Once we get the design data from this, then we'll know how many wells we need across the community. The good thing is the geologic characterization that goes with this, so we know where that shallow sand is, that's done. We talked about it right up front in the workshop. Both RESPEC and CBI had different paths. We came up with essentially the same answers with regard to the shallow sand. So, the geology piece that has to go with this is pretty well tied down. The other thing you're gonna see on here are some deep wells, and Deborah, I need the gas map now. This is a map I never would have foreseen. Horseman's Drive is right here. Okay? This is deep gas, not shallow gas. I'm mapping out shallow gas, but I don't have it done. I probably won't have it done until Monday. This is deep gas down in the MRAA. And you can see we've got a lot of gas.
Now, what color is the gas?
It's
Which one?
orange.
It's the orange, okay.
The blue is not much gas, up to orange is a lot of gas.
How deep?
Pardon?
How deep is it?
How deep down here is about 110 feet. And it's up to about 10 feet there.
It looks to me like the bullseye is right under my house.
We designed it that way.
That bubble is 10 feet thick.
Right here, and then it's 7 feet to 6 feet.
I don't get this, Mr. Dr. Hickok.
Well, actually, what's happened, I've explained to you before, and I'll have a few more Tuesday night. We've got the bottom of the clay where the gas is accumulating. Here is like this. And I don't show it very well there. It's domed up like this, and the gas is accumulated under that dome.
Sir, Dr. Hickok.
So imagine this.
On the bottom of the clay.
Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Dr. Hickok.
Mike.
Okay, that map right there, that's showing that most of the gas is accumulating under the community right here that has a lot of people that still living here and have people that come over and visit. Why aren't we, I mean, in our community across the street, I'm dividing up into two communities so you can understand. Why do we have 3 wells over there and none over here? I don't understand that.
We're putting them in down here.
Okay, but I mean, isn't it, it should be critical that we get over here and get this stuff out over here. We got, Ms. Donnery just told us in the last meeting you
It's
could
been
use
critical
her.
since day one,
Yeah,
but we didn't let them like y'all did.
she did.
Okay,
So,
No. I said they asked and I considered it.
okay,
Y'all let them go over there and do what they want.
what we've
Well,
got,
All right.
you need to talk to the neighbors.
right now.
I'm not gonna have a fight between us and them, okay?
Thank you.
Finish your presentation,
Here's
please,
what
sir.
we're doing. John, wherever he is. There he is. John has mandated for safety purposes, we can't drill deep wells into the MRA until we have the pipelines in. Because if we have a gas problem, you have to be able to hook that well up to a gas line. He has mandated, we gotta have the pipes in before we drill wells, and I totally agree with that decision. But as soon as the pipes are in the vent lines, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wells planned for the south side. And we do have several up here, as Mike brought up. We're gonna try to work on a couple of those to get them flaring, but the focus is down here where the gas is thickest. That is gonna take longer though than getting some of these shallow systems in. All right, we gotta get pipelines in, we gotta get access. You got a lot of stuff, whereas the shallow systems, you're talking 30-foot wells, trailer mounted units. So we're moving on multiple fronts at the same time. But this one's gonna take a bit longer, but we're going after the thick gas. And if you put
So Dr. Hickok, you're saying there's more, the gas on Sportsman's side is deeper than on the other side? Because you're showing more deep wells on this side,
deeper, it's thicker.
thicker, okay.
They're all in the same sand, is that correct, Dr. Hickok? They're in the same sand over here too?
Yeah.
Okay.
What'd you do? Very first one. No, that's not, there you go, there you go. What we've got is,
We didn't let them.
on the south side of 70,
They came in.
and extending up north, we've got a
Yes, they did.
thick layer of gas. Well,
Did the Bucks ask
I could show
what
you the
thought
map,
about them
but
letting them
it's,
put a well down?
the structure here is like this.
Did they ask,
It's
did
high.
Bucks ask
So
you
the
to
gas
Did
is
they ask for me?
accumulated all
No.
the way up
No,
to
they
here
didn't ask
under this
anybody.
high.
I'll tell you.
Over here,
That's
it's a
skinny to
bit
be
low.
well.
You didn't actually
So in
do
terms of
They
deep
asked me, I told them
gas,
no.
under this part of the community, we don't have much deep gas. But everybody's going, wait a minute, I got bubbles outside my door. And the reason is, it's coming up here, it's getting in these thin sands and spreading out. Okay? And that's why we've got bubbling up crawfish stew, we've got it off sauce pecan. So this is where the gas is coming from that you're seeing over here, but we're gonna intercept it at about 20, 30 feet across the community. This is a prime example where you can't just go after a few hot spots to protect the residents. You've gotta cover the community.
Sir, one more thing, can you get them to drill horizontally in this neighborhood so it doesn't mess up the community like it did ours? Do you think that's feasible or not?
Horizontal drilling out here is feasible. I'm not kidding you, it would probably take us 3 to 5 months to even get a contractor to consider it.
So what are y'all gonna do? I mean, you're gonna have boardwalks and flares and stuff, just like you do across the highway? That's terrible. Who wants to live next to all that?
There's gonna be
And you got plank roads, and then you have these flares and wells with all these hoses connected going, is that what you're gonna do over here?
Well, they didn't do that at the boat launch, so
Well, yeah, but they
let,
were.
let, let,
And why
let
did they do
him,
it?
let him
The
explain.
intent is, these 5 wells, and this may be all you ever have to put over here, okay? And the reason is, we're gonna go after what's called, I call it a coal bed methane technology, where we pump out the water and the gas at the same time, and that allows a single well to extend over a much bigger area. Texas Brine now has a permit to discharge any water they pump out of these wells to the sinkhole. They got that right, brand new. You can't discharge unless you have a permit. This may be all you need over here, but we have to put the well heads above ground. I wish we could put them below ground, but because of the master valves and everything, we gotta keep it above ground. But the piping, as I mentioned, we're gonna drill horizontal bores and run the piping through pipe runs under the community, and that applies to both sides of the road.
And the response I have to that is the design you see here in the parking lot, Dennis's parking lot, in both areas is what should be the finished product of those wells.
Okay, so we won't see the big hoses running down.
Well, you will see some construction when it's being built, but eventually they'll clean it up and close it like what you see here.
I think the only place that's above ground over there is by that BC2, I believe. Everything else is run underground.
Yeah, the reason it's above grade is we didn't have a right to bury on that property. The plan is to be like out here in front of Dennis where we have privacy fence around the wellhead and all the piping is below grade. And the flare down there will probably tie into a flare east of the canal, back in the woods there.
And you're showing 3 wells right here. Bruce, do you have property owner permission right there?
I think we will own property if not already.
It's all insurance.
Well, let me ask you this, the wells in the neighborhood, will y'all, if it's on the properties that Texas Brine owns, would houses be knocked down and put on the lots? Instead of against the highway?
We haven't decided that yet.
I mean, you can't put a well against the road, I'm sorry, it's ridiculous.
Here's the street.
Yeah, the street.
This is schematic, okay?
I understand that,
They're gonna be put away from the roads and stuff.
cause I mean, the way you got, the ones you have in the middle and then at the end by Sterling's,
It's right on the road.
I don't see where you can put them besides.
Yeah, it was in general those locations, and we didn't really pick the spot, the
Right.
exact spot, but in general, it was those locations with the spaces.
Yeah, we're not gonna put a vent well in the middle of the road.
No, I understand that,
It's
but
gonna be away from the road.
I did hear that they may be putting it next to the road, which doesn't make much sense if you own the
It's-
property.
Everybody is tuned into the aesthetics of this. We heard you loud and clear. It's too bad it happened that way, but we're very tuned into that, okay? We actually talked about that in the workshop. These have to be aesthetically as pleasing as we can get them. So anyway, that's for the deep gas. I laid out the schedule of what it's gonna take. This is moving forward on multiple fronts, multiple people, a lot of people are working on this right now. We've got, the reason we wanted Texas Brine in the room, they're the ones paying for it, they are committed to this. CB&I DNR, our job is to follow up. We haven't relinquished our role as oversight and watchdog at all. Okay, but this has gone on long enough, we had to get together to figure out a solution. There will be bumps in the road on this, we'll find out some things work, some don't, but the technology we're talking about is tried and true. Now it's an implementation and engineering design. And I think, Deborah, I'm ready to take questions.
Any reason why it took 13 months to come up with this decision? Just curious. I know it's y'all get y'all brains together and take some thought, but just explain that to us, please.
A couple things on that, Mike. First of all, I think everybody over here is gonna acknowledge, yeah, it took too long, but it did. That's passed. Part of the reason it took so long is because dealing with this low pressure gas in a geology like we've got out here, there are a lot of trial and error things. And it took quite a while to get the geology characterized so we can do this. All right? Next time, people have got us to learn from. It did take a long time. We all know it. Now we're going forward. We've got an action plan. You know, what should have been done when, that's going to be discussed and talked about and litigated for a long time down the road. Right now, all my efforts are going forward. We'll worry about what happened in the past some other time. But right now, our efforts have to go forward.
What are y'all doing about the source?
The deep source? What we're doing is next Tuesday, Don Marlin's presenting the 3D seismic. Okay? And he has identified one probable source zone that he's going to present to you. How that's going to be addressed and everything else, we haven't decided, but obviously going after the source is very important. So we got to do a little more work on it, but he is going to show it to you Tuesday night. And mitigating that source right now, John Roger Smith, who's on the Blue Ribbon Commission, has volunteered. He's going to help us out. We've also hired Dick Hughes from LSU, who's a petroleum engineer, and they're going to look at it from a petroleum engineering standpoint. So we knew the question was coming. We knew we had to answer it. We got the people in place.
I mean, if you don't go out to the sewer, you'll be sucking a while.
I know it will. No matter what, even if the source is gone tomorrow, I'll tell you folks, the deep wells are probably going to run for several years.
But it'll keep the gas from coming up to the surface.
The goal of this whole program is to keep the gas away from the people at the surface. That's why it has to be engineered and installed as a permanent system.
You know, when we started putting relief wells in back in January, February, we didn't have all the geology that Jerry talked about. The reason we put wells in, we said, let's put them in on property we have access to, and we don't have to build roads. That's when we started close to the sinkhole. And then we built the roads between the sinkhole and the community, with the intent being those wells to intercept, remove gas, and intercept anything that might still be coming from the sinkhole. So that's been the strategy since early on, to try to make sure that we stop any more gas from coming over. I see this being, you know, those wells, there's a lot of work gonna go on with those wells to make sure that they're performing as good as they can. And we've had numerous discussions about that and plans, and that's one of the reasons we needed this discharge permit, to allow us to try different things with the relief wells to pump out water while they're venting gas. But the other thing is now we're talking about, you know, how do we keep those wells performing and get the gas out from below the community?
This vacuum system, does it pull the gas, or does it pull the water also?
It pulls water and gas, that's why it's called dual phase. It takes both gas and
You
liquid.
can't, the pressure differential in the shallow is too small. If you tried to vent these things, you'd have a well every 10 feet. And so as Peter demonstrated, you pull it out, run it through a gas buster or something, separate the gas from the water, and then discharge water to the sinkhole, and the gas goes up a flare of thermal oxide.
What about subsidence?
I don't think we're gonna see that much subsidence around here, if any. I know, it's surveyed, okay? The amount of drawdown we're talking away from the well itself is probably on the order of this much, but that's all we need to get the gas to flow. And what we're doing is, once we get a few more calculations done, we're gonna have the Itasca folks look at subsidence through consolidation and be able to answer your question quantitatively. But meantime, Texas Brine, I think Miller is doing it, Fenstermacher is doing surveys all over the community. We haven't forgotten the subsidence issue.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the sinkhole, I'm talking about the other side of Grand Bayou.
Yep.
You know,
That's
on top of the dome. You know, there's been sucking water out of the ground for years, and it's sunk.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the annual report that Dr. Radigan puts out shows that as clear as the day, as it can be. Yeah.
These flares in the last maybe week seem to have really jumped up. Is something being done different, or do we have more gas?
Some of the new well designs have been implemented. We did find a couple gas spots. The gas spots are right over here.
That being where?
That's,
flare is now.
yeah, there's a flare up here. The first wells are right here on.
Across from the Texas Brine Road.
Right.
North of 7.
So y'all attach some more wells to the flares, and that's why they're.
Brand new wells with better completion methods, because that's been an issue. We've talked about that in public meetings. It's been an issue. We've come to consensus on how to install these wells to minimize formation damage. What you're seeing going up the flare is a result of that discussion, shall we say. Okay, that's why that flare especially is doing much better. It's got good wells going to it. It's in a thick gas area. It's doing really well. Now, if the dewatering works, you're gonna see flares like they were early on. Because the idea of dewatering is to get the water down, so you have a bigger pressure change from the formation into the well, so you get more gas in faster, and you reach out farther. And that should work. We've got to tweak the systems and make sure there's a sweet spot in there. But that's engineering, that's operations. But the idea is to get the water down, get gas out.
The design of well in 2003 that was used with the catch basins above ground to separate your water from whatever coming out, keep your wells clean. Was that a thought about?
Yeah, we looked at that, and actually the design we're using now with the screens and stuff, we don't have to fight that problem of sediment and stuff coming out. We get water and gas. And we looked at that, oh yeah, we looked at that many times. The well design we've got now actually addresses that problem before it becomes a problem.
What's your estimate on your gas volume?
Honestly, this map is so new, I haven't run it yet. It's obviously a lot more than the 45 million cubic feet I told you before. I haven't run the volume estimates. I'm not going to until we finish with the MIP HPT investigation, which is probably a couple weeks out. But there's no kidding, there's a lot more gas than I told you 3 months ago.
Was that the connection between the two sections right here? There's nothing further down?
There's a ridge in the dome that goes up here. There may also be one down here. We don't know for sure. We know this one does.
They had talked about maybe putting a vent well around the Trish Canal. I see that's one of them gas pockets. I mean, are they gonna put anything there, or?
That's.
Cause I mean, the way it looks here is if you don't, and you start venting in the neighborhood, it's just gonna feed.
It's just gonna go back.
You're exactly right. What we've done right now, though, we want to get this going. We're not forgetting about the south area at all. This is gonna have to be addressed after we get the community safe. All right? Because this is gonna involve barge work, with drill rigs and everything else, plus the infrastructure out here. But the southern gas down here obviously is gonna have to be dealt with, or you're exactly right. All you're doing, you're just gonna be pulling it up here.
How about to the west? This is over
West,
Trish's
we've already
property.
got, one vent well.
But I mean, further than what your map shows, what's the pockets of gas look like over there?
We've got real good definition in here. Now, we just got the CPTs. You're talking over here.
Over there. Yeah, over there in your belly, yeah.
we've gotta look at the investigation going west, obviously we got 2 feet of gas
Yeah,
here.
I saw some, MIHBT rigs out there, I'm assuming y'all should have some down there right now, do you have, just early data?
I am
Oh,
getting
something.
data in every night, we're processing it every night. Right now, we're, I think, almost done with the investigation in the community. There is one more CBT, MIHBT going in here, just north of the road over here, to define what this looks like a little better, and then the community's done. So we know what the gas in the community looks like, we can go forward with the community. This over here, we're gonna have to triage this. We can't address everything at once. I wish we could. This is big. We gotta address the community first, then we're going after what's over here, down here, and over here.
You mentioned there's gonna be a dual bag, one for water, one for gas. The water's gonna be transported to the sinkhole pipeline on truckers. So when you're running one line, subsurface, you'd be running 2 lines, one for gas and one for the water.
Yeah, it may come out of the ground as one, then it'd go through a gas buster, separate the two, the water will go there and the gas will go up.
So what is that gonna do to the land if you suck the water out, and what you were saying, when you suck the water out, it's gonna make the land sink?
I don't think so.
You got the sand, that's sand bed, that's packed sand, where the water flows through.
The water should come up from under to replace.
So it
But
won't make any
But I'm not gonna ignore that question, because settlement, if it was my house, I'd worry about it. The Itasca folks have already done the settlement around the sinkhole, you're gonna see that next week. As soon as we get a bit further on the design here, they're gonna do the same calculations under the community. Right now, we've done preliminary work, we really don't think it's a problem, but we're not gonna ignore it and assume it's not a problem.
And if it does start being a problem, then what? I mean, is it gonna all be stopped?
Yeah, if it is a problem, we'll have to address it, but then you're kinda caught, okay, if it's subsiding a little bit, can we fix the house? Keep the system running, because you still got gas.
And the thing about subsiding, it happens over a year's period of time. You're not gonna see it overnight, you're gonna see it in a year.
Right.
How many gallons of water do you think you're gonna have to pump out to rectify the situation over here? Because that's gonna tell you how much subsidence you gonna have.
It's,
but you know,
I don't know the volumes, I know what kind of drawdown we're looking at, and that's what'll cause the subsidence. We're looking at
4 feet, you say? About 3 feet?
Away from the well. The well itself, we're gonna pull down about 20 feet, but the cone is a very steep cone, it'll come up like this. And we're calculating that right now, how much drawdown we can expect around these. The preliminary numbers look 4 to 5 feet away from the well.
I'm lying something stupid right here. If you're sucking it out, if it cavitates, does that present a problem?
The pump?
If
Well,
you're sucking the water and.
Yeah, the shallow system will be actually, the vacuum pump will pull both water and gas out. So you won't have to worry about cavitating the pump.
So it'll just pull gas out if the
starts.
water draws down in that cone you're talking about.
Right, and they pulled out, I think about what, 10 gallons a minute, Peter?
Yeah.
Over on the Stephanie bubbles. They pulled out about 10 gallons a minute. He's got all the data from that. This is so new, he hasn't even had a chance to work it up yet, but that was out of 2 wells. The deep wells, Mike, that are going down here, you gotta put shrouds around the pump or they will cavitate. We've seen that when we ran some tests over on the Texas Brine property. As you get the gas coming in, you know, in a centrifugal pump, it'll just sit there and spin. So what you do, you put a shroud around it. This is coal bed methane stuff. So the water has to come in the bottom, and the water comes in the well, down like this and up through the pump. When it comes in, the gas goes up out of the water. And that's a real standard design. I've implemented that kind of pump at a number of places, not for this, but it works really well.
I'm just wondering, I've heard Mike almost for a year now ask about the horizontal drilling. And every time it's, looking into it, yes, it's a possibility, yes, it's feasible to think about that. And now that it's come down to it, you're saying it'll be 5 months to even get a contract. Why haven't y'all been looking into getting a contract way before now. And what's 5 months in the scheme of things versus doing all this other stuff?
Problem with horizontal wells, all it's gonna address is deep gas.
But we gotta address that, dude. I think that's what she's
You
talking
gotta
about.
address it. You could not safely put in a horizontal well in these shallow sands. You'd have frac outs, you'd have gas coming up all over the place.
I don't mean to speak for you, Talisha, but I think she's talking about the deep water stuff you're seeing right there.
Yeah,
The shallow sand is another story.
I've drilled a lot of horizontal wells. It's feasible out here. It's gonna be a lot faster to put in 5 or 6 vertical deep wells and get at it that way than a horizontal well.
It is now, but if y'all had been doing it
I know.
long ago, you know.
I totally agree. Like I said, it's taken too long, but we are where we are today. We gotta focus our efforts going forward. What happened in the past, what should have been done, that's gonna be played out.
But this is the past 5 months from now. So if you start now looking, in 5 months from now, you can come back and tell her that you got a horizontal well set up out there. That's rectified. These people got $500,000 homes over here. You know, well, I'll take that back. They got $10,000 homes right now because they're not worth anything. But to bring that value back up, they're gonna need something like this.
I recommend Mike would go with vertical wells.
Okay. I'll show you.
We've got the study, we've got the horizontal well study. I've drilled thousands of feet of horizontal wells. I recommend out here, to get the problem under control, I recommend vertical wells. And I'm not even worried about cost or anything, I'm looking at logistics and safety. To not have frac outs, even for a 100-foot deep well, is gonna take a lot of engineering, and you're talking a big footprint to control it. And if you do have a frac out with these kind of gas pressures, it would be very ugly. So I'm recommending vertical wells with technology. We've had false starts, we know how to put these vertical wells in now, and that's what I'm recommending.
I'm okay with that answer. You know, if I had heard that before, I'd be okay with that. I just want to make sure it wasn't a time thing.
On the assumption that we put in vertical wells on Sportsman's Drive, when do you expect the first well will go in?
As soon as the pipe is hooked up to it.
Months, weeks.
Is that a month from now, 2 months from now?
3 weeks.
Within a month.
Will we know where they're gonna be before you put them in?
Will y'all get back in touch
Oh,
with
yeah.
us?
Oh, yeah. What we're doing now is, we'll have we've got to look at the infrastructure and design, and we're gonna place these so they're out of the road, so hopefully people don't even see them. Yeah, we're working on that right now. It's just, in the 24 hours I had to put this presentation together, I stuck the dots on a map in the general locations. We'll move them around so they're appropriate.
So in the next couple of weeks, you're gonna tell us exactly where you're gonna put them, whether you have to knock a house down, etc. Presumably, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
John's pretty adamant he wouldn't budge. Pipes are in and ready to go in case we have problems before you start drilling.
Figuring out how much it's
Yeah,
gonna cost.
Y'all got some
that's
people
fine.
get settled.
And they're gonna be flared in the swamp behind.
Exactly where they're gonna get installed.
They got the checks.
They will be, okay.
What's the safety factor of all this is all getting
They
down
get
to
the, they can
zero,
get the slab up to.
8, 8, 9?
Which end of the scale mount is
Tell me good, what would be that?
the safety factor for the residents?
Yeah,
is-
everything drilling, blowing up, seeping, smelling.
It's between a 9 and a 10.
Oh,
Okay,
good.
that's another question. These vent wells, the vent wells you're gonna put in the neighborhoods, will you have, I think I asked John this, continuous gas monitoring around those wells while they're flaring?
While they're flaring?
I mean, while they're venting. I mean, if you got them in an enclosed area between the houses and stuff is what I'm saying.
You're talking putting an LEL sensor in the fence or whatever?
Right, that's what he's speaking of, and I'm
If
assuming
we
can do that.
put a fence around an ORW, it'd likely be a treated pine or a cedar fence that would just block it from view, but it would still be open, so any gas that escaped would go straight up. You don't really wanna put an enclosure around them.
I don't want, I'm not saying put an enclosure, but I'm saying, you worried about gas coming up in houses or in yards and stuff. Hadn't done it yet. Now you wanna put a vent well to get it out, cause it's important, but yet you don't wanna put a monitor for in case there's a leak in the neighborhood.
And Nathan, I'll just suggest this. Currently, we have 2 area raised down Sportsman's Drive. We got 3 actually. We can actually move those inside the enclosures. All we need
Or
is
even
power
next to it
at
is all I'm
those.
saying.
Right,
Well-
all we need is power to
That
to
one
run
right there
it.
is where our kids run back and forth, and that's how
Well,
they
exactly.
play, that's what scares me, is the one up there in the front is.
It's,
Right
it
there, right next to the house.
sounds like what John is
So,
recommending,
right outside.
what John is mentioning is a relatively low cost.
Yeah, it's already there, we have 3, there we can use, but we just have to figure out power.
I'd recommend we don't argue about that, that we
Well,
trust
you're gonna
them
have
to
power,
do
cause the
the right
pumps are
thing.
gonna have to be submersibles.
There you go.
So,
The other thing, don't forget, as I said, the shallow system, that's gonna be in what we call subgrade vaults. And then they'll have either traffic covers or seal covers on each well. And so the chance of anything getting out of that is very, very small. The procedure is the same one we use on the geoprobes. If you have to open it up to work on it, you go out with your instruments, you check it ahead of time, and if it's okay, then you go ahead and unscrew it or unbolt it. But the shallow systems, the wells are gonna be subgrade. And so the chance of what you're talking about, minimal. The vent wells out here, I would recommend, given the cost of LEL monitors and stuff, if people feel better, you can hook them up, because they just don't cost that much money.
Is it safe to assume that the gas that's down there, the deep gas, is the same that's coming up in the mine?
The isotopic signature we talked about, it shows it's the same as what we have in, the Oxy 3.
So if there is a leak at any one of the wells, it should dissipate immediately, just like it's doing on the canal.
Yeah.
And there's no reading on any of them.
Right.
So that would mean if we have a leak at the well,
it would be
we can do the same.
it would be, well, if it's the same leak, it would not show very much.
Right.
Unless it gets volume, then the LEL would come up. In open atmosphere, it's very difficult to get a 100% LEL.
Okay, so basically you got 3 levels going on here. You have the shallow gas, the deep gas, and the deeper gas. Right? And the shallow gas is gonna have this vacuum system where the water and gas are gonna be pumped out, and you're gonna flare off the gas somewhere. And then you're gonna have the deep ORW, new ORW wells basically. That
They'll
ain't hit,
pump both gas and water too.
and they're gonna flare in the woods.
Yep.
And then you need to figure out what you're gonna do with the actual true source.
You got the deep source.
We don't know what that is. We don't know what that is.
Tuesday night, Don Marlin's gonna show you where he thinks it is.
Okay, so
On
how,
a 3D site.
how long will it take to do the first layer?
All of
When
it,
those suckers are running, how long is that gonna take?
the first 4 or
The
the
shallow, the whole shebang, how long is it gonna
Oh,
take?
boy.
It depends on the number that we determine appropriate, and we won't know that until we do the first series of tests, which should begin as early as next week.
How long will it take you to do the testing on those 4? Let's maybe go there.
The initial testing is gonna be done as the wells go in, so we're gonna have a pretty good idea, but we don't wanna finalize the design for the community, because putting wells around the community is gonna be very disruptive. We need to run these for a bit of time to finalize that number. I can't give you an estimate of time right now, but I can assure you we're gonna be pushing it as hard as we can. The next step after these 4 are in and running is gonna be, here's where the wells are going, here's where the pipes are going for the community.
I mean, is it safe to assume that this is at least a year out before this is all done, even at the shallow layer? Like that's.
We're looking months, right, Mark?
Months?
For the shallow, to get it in?
To get all of them in? Yeah, it's such a wide range of possibilities. I mean, we may end up having to place 100 of them in the ground, or as small as 16. If it's 16, we can have it done.
Okay, so then the deeper wells, how long will that take?
To get it in?
To get it where it's all running and blowing and going?
Infrastructure design has already begun, and it'll take place through most of next week. And once we have our access confirmed, we should be able to mobilize the rig within about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it takes 3 days, 4 days, single ORW. So, 5 weeks.
These over here that are north of 70, that are putting out gas now, from the time we knew we had gas there until the gas was going up the stack was 3 weeks. Now, the difference there, of course, we could run the pipes on the surface. Here, we've got to get the pipes underground. That takes a little longer.
So we're still looking at months for all those are in.
But we have the pipes underground before we drill the well.
Right.
So that's different. The other thing that's important to note is we are not gonna be.
I would say we're looking at a couple months before all these wells are in and flares going up the stack. But it's gonna start flaring. We're not gonna wait until all of them are in.
I got you.
One goes in, hooks up, it's going. And even if the water piece takes a little longer, we're gonna be flaring the gas up, dewatering. But these will eventually be dewatered too.
Okay, and then how long will the deep gas solution take? The deeper gas, or the deepest
I
gas?
haven't thought about it, other than what Don Marlin showed us. We got a lot of talking to do. That's gotta get some petroleum reservoir engineers and everything else.
Maybe another workshop.
Yeah, that's all.
So in that area, that deep area, is a large lot.
Actually, it's not that large.
So, what we call it?
I can't remember Don's number, but it's not.
I remember the number.
I told him, decide.
Gary, do you wanna know the number? I remember it.
Bruce just told me it's 20 million.
That's right.
Okay, you're,
And
So
it's-
just one more question. So do we now believe that the gas in the deepest source is continuously feeding the gas in the deeper source, and then that is net? So
they
deeper
were.
is or has it stopped? From the deepest to the deeper?
The gas is still coming up in the sinkhole. You've seen the bubble victims. That's coming up from deep. How that's moving through the aquifer, I can't tell you right now. I would suppose right now, some of that gas is still getting into the aquifer.
The deep gas.
Well, yeah, 'cause it's coming up in the sinkhole. You can see the bubble videos.
And the
So it's
source
not-
is near the
So we're
sinkhole.
not dealing with a finite source in the deeper, I'll call it the deeper gas.
I wouldn't say that. It's not infinite.
But I mean, in other words, the deeper gas is still being fed by something deeper than that. Is that correct?
That's a likely possibility. We will have a discussion. This is where a couple of us in this room probably
That's
have
why
a
this
discussion.
question.
But the fact we get the raindrop and basketball bubbles in the sinkhole, tells me there's gas coming up from deep down still. And how it's, if it's getting out in the aquifer and stuff, I can't answer that. But it's still coming up.
Dr. Hickox, the red and white thing, those are gonna be the new deep wells, and they'll also be, vacuum, they'll be pumping, the dues purpose. Will y'all run another test over there, and the thing on this, or y'all already, that's already been done?
On the deeper wells?
On the regular, the ones that go down 120 feet.
And I think Peter is doing a test when this week on the deeper?
Peter's doing a test out here,
Okay.
and Texas Brine is starting a similar test in the next week or so, right?
So that, all we're gonna see is those type of wells from now on, correct? All we're gonna see from now on are those type wells.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you might see, Mike, is if we succeed as good as we believe we will on these shallow dual phase, we'll go back and make attempts to turn some of the original ORWs into dual phase. So it doesn't necessarily mean there'll be a whole other wave of deep wells necessary. We can use the wells that we already have in place. As Gary said, when you're pulling water, you have the ability to reach out a pretty good distance away from that wellbore. So even though it may not be in an area that looks like it has a lot of gas, we should be able to reach out a few hundred feet.
Yeah, aren't those already perfect? Aren't you already, right at the top on those though? And in order to draw, yeah, don't you have to go down a little deeper? You can
No,
just
they're-
suck right from the top
They're in the gas zone.
and the water come up with it?
Actually, the way that we have most of the wells designed, we have the drop tube and the shroud in place, and we have a pump in the well.
Okay,
And so we can pump the water level down enough to increase the gas flow, as long as we can continuously discharge the water to the sinkhole. So that's the scheme. We already are instrumented to do it. It's just
y'all know what y'all doing. I didn't mean to get into a technical discussion on this. I'm just curious, that's all. Maybe I should have talked after the meeting.
Now, and what we're gonna do, Mike, as soon as these tests are done, I'm gonna be back somewhere talking to y'all, okay? Because I've gotta keep you informed, because you did shoot. We owe you that. So as these deep tests are done, we're gonna be back and show you what the results are, just like we showed you the shallow here. Fortunately with the shallow, I didn't have to show you any numbers or any graphs. You can see the picture. The deep ones, there will probably be some graphs, but we're gonna be communicating the results of those tests as we go along.
My main concern is that it's not practiced in the neighborhood, that it's practiced on site, which I'm satisfied with the answer.
We've heard you loud and clear. The first one's over there in the swamp, and then the other one's over on Texas Run property.
This water being pumped into the sinkhole, I mean, you got your berm around there and this is all contained. Sooner or later, you can only pump so much water. Is it gonna overflow the berm or be putting
The
berm
amount
up?
of water
There's not that
we're
much
talking
water.
about compared to what they pump out of the MRA every day for the industrial wells is kind of a flea on the back.
So it's not like it's millions of gallons going in there all the time.
No, I mean, these water supply wells make somewhere around 1,000, 2,000 gallons a minute.
Right.
And so the water in the sinkhole is going to the east towards all those supply wells.
I think just one more thing from me. The blogs talked about us seeing results within weeks instead of years. What is that about? I mean, you mean after all this is up and running? Because it literally says observable results within weeks instead of years.
I showed you the Stephanie bubble test. We fully expect as we get the shallow system in, the effect there is, once the system's running, it's gonna be met weeks.
So it won't take years to get rid of all the gas.
Well,
Not to
they-
get all the
they-
years. That's what.
The example that I see is, by Nick's house, there's the power poles with the anchors. And when it rains and when it's puddled, there's gas bubbling there. Once the site is set up over there, the test will be the next time it rains to go see if it's bubbling next to those anchors.
Or you could put a water hose,
So
something.
or a water hose, but with the shallow stuff, you can visually see an effect once they have the system set up. So that is the easy way to evaluate it.
We're not gonna get the gas gone in weeks.
That's control. Yeah.
We're gonna intercept it so it can't hurt you and your kids or anything.
Okay.
That's really, what Gary just said is critical. Within a matter of weeks, once we have the knowledge to install the proper number of shallow dual phase wells, it should take weeks, literally 2-3 weeks, to create a zone between the surface and some depth below where you have no gas. And so what we're doing is we're taking gas away from the property. And by continuing to produce it, we can continue to get it away from the property. And while that's taking place, we start shifting our efforts down into the MRA, which is deeper wells. And Peter finishes his testing, and then we may try the same technique with those deeper wells.
So you're pumping or sucking or whatever it is out of the shallow quicker than what's in the deeper and deepest to get to the shallow.
If I tried to fix the problem in the community by pumping at depth, you're talking a long time. Certainly months, if not years. What we can do in weeks is get the gas up here. And it's because we're getting it up here and it only has to go 20 feet to the surface. Well, that means if I create a vacuum down here, I only have 20 feet to deal with, and that's why it's so effective.
So this system, it doesn't just suck in that sand layer, it sucks from the sand layer up.
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, these systems, we talk about a clay above the sand, it's actually fractured and stuff. And what it'll do, it creates a vacuum here, but essentially the gas flow is from below and from above into that layer, and then it goes out the pump and out. So it doesn't just stop the gas, it actually, the airflow, and the vacuum tubes, you can measure it, the airflow from the surface will be down. And we put in, I personally put in probably 20 or 30 systems similar to this for other purposes. And the technology is standard. The complicating factor is here, we've got a community, we've got homes, and we've got to deal with getting the infrastructure in and around the homes, and that's important. So
We learned something in the workshop from Gary Hill, the fellow that's doing most of the drilling out here, that Walgreens, they built drugstores all over the country, and they had a practice of buying corner lots where old service stations used to exist. And a lot of those lots had leaking tanks. So they had to install these type systems, and I've never noticed them. Gary said they're in nearly all the Walgreens locations. So that tells me they're pretty concealed.
If you know what you're looking for, you can spot them all over the place, but most people,
Well, we will.
all you see is the call.
I'll never go back to Walgreens without looking.
That's kind of what we're talking
Kinda like when you're looking for a certain kind of corn.
When you install these first 4 shallow vacuum, based systems, how far will they reach out? I perceive they're not gonna reach out 1,000 feet, for example. They're gonna reach out a couple hundred feet?
We know from Peter's testing that at the very least, we can get 60 feet. Now, we didn't have.
No, I'm not talking about through the earth. I'm talking about how far out you're gonna lay out a spider web of wells.
Oh, for the first
And what I'm saying is, how far out are you gonna place those wells? You gonna go 100 feet, 200 feet, 1,000 feet?
Well, you're talking about the pattern that we have right now.
Yes.
Those were selected for different criteria than they're really selected so we can get the best data to do the testing. We knew we had a geoprobe well in close proximity, or we had a bubble site in close proximity, and we knew we had access to those locations. And as Gary said, those are kind of general locations. So we think we can move in there quickly, get our testing done with a vacuum truck. That's just a truck that'll roll up and start the vacuum process. And then by looking at all those indicators around those sites, we'll get a better idea on what our radius of influence is.
Okay.
And then with that, we'll be able to come back and say, okay, we need this as well.
So you're gonna put in 4 or more discrete wells,
Right.
hook up a pump, and see what happens.
Truck mounted vacuum truck.
All right,
Pump.
I got
We'll just do it right there on the spot, and then we can do our test.
I envision these sites will probably have a couple extraction wells that are larger diameter, and then we'll probably have a bunch of 1-inch wells around so you can measure the pressure. Because once you get that data, then you can see what your radius of influence is. Peter on the first test had those. He didn't go out far enough, which is actually a good problem to have. But we'll probably have wells at like 50, 100, 200 feet away from the extraction wells so we can look at radius influence. Because radius influence is critical to how many wells we have to put under the community.
Yes.
Fortunately, these are skinny wells. They can put them in with a geoprobe rig, just like we did the geoprobe wells.
The one on Crawfish too, you're gonna have to run a new line, or you're gonna tie into the existing line?
We'll use existing lines where we can, and our objective is to get the gas out into this flare that's in the open lot.
Over to the right?
It's on the east.
It's already,
Yeah, the east end.
that's already piped all the way to Boudreaux's well, I believe, correct?
We have 2 trunk lines that are already in place, and they're there today and ready to go. We just have to tie into them with the wells, and they'll bring gas out away from the community where we can get it and burn it.
Oh, you went through the swamp right there? Or you was just pushing your finger down?
Right across here.
You got it right across there? Or you got it coming around? On
No, it's not there yet. I think that's the plan for that particular location.
The 2 that we have now run east-west. I think one of them runs
Yeah,
parallel.
one's on the south side of Highway 70 that picks up these 2 relief wells that are Dennis Landry's property, and it goes out to the east side. And the other one's down the right of way of Sauce Pecan.
So how are you gonna extract, and what are you gonna do with the water that's flowing?
same technique, we're gonna have
So,
to.
so my understanding is all you've got is, one line for the gas going out to the,
A 2-inch line, correct?
do you have another empty line?
We will have to install those. We will have
You
to
don't have
install
one
those.
yet.
If you have several of these, will you have to get a bigger line or more lines, or how we gonna do that?
Depending on how much water we're moving, yes. What we'll do though is the permanent pipelines are probably gonna be oversized so we can accommodate additional flow once they're put in. A 2-inch line for what we're talking about with P&B.
Not gonna work.
But for the temporary stuff, we're gonna use what we got.
So when are you gonna put in the other line? I mean, when are you planning on putting in these shallow stations?
We hope to have a rig mobilized as early as Thursday or Friday of next week for the wells. And they won't require lines because we'll have a vacuum truck that will be able to perform the testing. The design work has already begun and it'll take place up until that time next week. And then we'll go straight from there to tying into the trunk line for gas and drilling horizontals to build a water distribution network. We don't have a water distribution network in place right now. And that's what most of the design work is for, is to figure out how to get the water back to the sink. And our objective is to keep everything below ground and use horizontal borings to the extent possible. But as you can imagine, there's still some access agreement rights and things like that that have to be negotiated. And like Gary, we got this on our plate at 24 hours ago, so it's gonna take some time.
Where's that vacuum truck gonna be on, by Nick's house? So be in the road?
We don't really have an order yet on the timing of the wells, but,
No, what I mean, where's the vacuum truck you talking about? Where you gonna park it at?
don't know that.
Well,
It's
isn't it a dual vacuum?
it's total vacuum, it'll hold both gas and water.
All right. So my question again is, if you're gonna put that truck there and you're gonna run your sample, what are you gonna do with the water?
It'll go on the truck.
We're gonna pump it in the truck.
Okay, what you gonna do with the gas?
That's gonna go to atmosphere, right?
You gonna vent it right there in the neighborhood?
Right there in the neighborhood.
Or we can lay temporary line into the trunk line. I mean, we haven't developed the final plan for all this. That's what's taking place right now.
Well, I'd certainly like to know what you plan on doing before you do it. And not like you did with the 30 seismic, you just up and said, forget about you, and you just went around it. Now, I asked then if you would let me know ahead of time, and you didn't. So.
We hear you, Nick.
They heard me last time.
There you go.
It's
Exactly.
Well, it going into the atmosphere is not really hurting anything, because it's going, with the
No,
bubbles, it's
bubbles
still
anyway.
going in the atmosphere, right?
Well, why don't we just punch a hole in over here and just let it all go in the atmosphere?
I always send it to my house, I can sell it.
Save y'all a lot of money.
Down by the pipeline.
Good luck, Donnie, I've been asking that question.
That's, like I said, the stuff down south, down here, we're gonna have to deal with that later. I gotta deal with this. Now, the technology will probably be similar to this. But right now, we've gotta focus on this. I wish we had resources and everything to address everything at once we don't. We gotta prioritize, the community comes first, then we're gonna worry about the swamp, the bayou.
Dr. Haycock, before y'all vent this in the atmosphere, I wanna let y'all know ahead of time, you're gonna have problems, because we're not gonna stand for that in our neighborhood. You heard me loud and clear.
I hear you loud and clear.
I'm gonna do whatever I have to do. That includes going to jail. Hear me, Lonnie? Not gonna let them fit that in our neighborhood, okay?
Out of the back truck?
Out of the vac truck, you can't drive the back truck over here and vent it out.
Well, the back truck, it pulls the vacuum, and what comes out of the vacuum goes up the pipe.
So the gas comes up out the pipe into the neighborhood. Right now, we got a little bit coming up.
And Mike, let me just say this, that it's my understanding the back truck is gonna operate for about 8 hours. And once the system is in place, the trailer that you see, is my understanding, that will then get handled through an oxidizer or a flare stack. But for the temporary vac truck, just to get the test, an 8-hour test done, to see what's the radius of influence and so forth, that is what's in question. And I think that for that 8-hour period.
You got a spot right there at the corner, at the end of Salisbury Corne. You can try it out there, and you don't have to vent it. You don't have to do a vent it into the aquifer. You can send it down that pipeline to the next one. That's all I'm saying, John. We don't want that. We got enough damn gas in our community right now. We don't want more. Okay. I don't think anybody in here wants any more gas in that thing. I know this lady over here said that it's not any harm.
Well, is it any harm for it to come out the truck for 8 hours?
Methane gas goes straight up in the air. But you can do proper protective measures in getting the stack up and away from the engines and any ignition source. If you get it high enough, once it reaches atmosphere, the LEL point's not going to be very far from the actual stack itself. We're not talking about a lot of gas in the testing. Now, we'll be able to test that.
So you're gonna vent it to atmosphere by running back in the truck, and you don't know how much you're gonna pull out, right?
Well, I'm not doing it, but
I don't get told, I'm talking to you though, John.
I know. I believe that can be proper safety measures just for the 8-hour test. To get these.
This is just for an 8-hour test, is what you saying?
Just for 8 hour shift. I already indicated the permanent systems will have to get through the normal flow lines.
So this thing gonna be here for 8 hours, and then you getting out of Dodge with the vacuum truck.
That's my understanding with the vacuum truck, unless somebody corrects me.
This man right next to you is the one you're gonna have to convince to that. Okay, he's the one that's is next to his house.
Right. Okay. And we'll talk. But we discussed this, and I am adamant about getting, once the permanent system in, they need to go to the flare stacks. I agree that or to an oxidizer. But to get the system set up, and because the infrastructure not in place and may take months to get in place, that just to get design work done, an 8-hour test is important for those engineers to get work.
And how much notice will we have about this, when these will be done?
Hopefully that,
We'll be knocking on doors.
That if somebody isn't comfortable, they can leave for that time frame.
Correct.
The other thing, given this discussion, I recommend that there be a full-time health and safety professional monitoring continuously around the back truck.
How about containers? Where's the EQ right here? You gonna have containers to check air quality?
Well, for the temporary vac truck, when we're here, we will have our multi-rays we will bring them over there and monitor around when we're here. With the stack, we're not gonna find anything because I'm not gonna have somebody climb on top and put it on top of the.
How tall is the stack gonna be?
It's gonna be on the
They
truck.
can make it as tall as you want, but typically with 20, 30 feet.
Maybe 10 feet, but it's coming off the top of a vacuum truck, so it puts it up maybe 18, 20 feet.
We will monitor around the trucks when we're here. When they're here and we're here.
Well, what I'm saying, whether DEQ is here or not, my recommendation to Texas Brine for when the vac truck's in the neighborhood, you have a person dedicated to continuous monitoring in and around the vac truck.
Well, what I'm hearing is that this is no problem. No problem to safety and health. Why don't y'all just go punch holes around here and let this shit vent?
But they're only talking for 8 hours, Mike.
No, if it's 8 hours, it's good. And then it's good for 40 hours. If
No,
it's
they're
good for
saying 8
5,000
hours.
it's either good or it's not good.
Mike, the system may run for years.
Well, let it run in the air.
But to get the design.
Why spend all the money to get it out the neighborhood? You understand? I'm being facetious, okay? And I think y'all understand that.
I know, and understand in the discussion of trying to move forward with this important shallow gas system, the proper safety measures can be taken so they can get their test done, so that engineers can get the design done.
You got three other ones there, you got three other ones that's
You
hooked right
said
there to that
the
well.
proper safety measures, you know, just don't, you're not living there. You know, so it's easy for you to assume that that is fine, it's only 8 hours, we can take the chance.
We're not taking a chance.
You know, but I live there.
I know you do.
But just,
You are not-
I don't understand why
I
people
would
won't just
not
leave
propose
for 8
this
hours.
If I thought there was a risk of anybody living.
They're gonna have to provide me with the proper safety plan and.
But the day the truck's there, you
Instead
can
of
tell everybody, get
wasting
out,
all this time and money.
come back tomorrow.
Well, why should I have to leave? Why do I have to leave? Just because? You know? If I got things to do, why do I leave? It's my home.
If it bothers you that much, we can move this to another place until we get the permanent system designed. We went after this because you got bubbling around your house, and we felt we could get it stopped soon. If it bothers you that much to have the back truck out there, we'll move it.
I mean, you got the one right close this way, though, 21 is not that far, a couple of houses over. Why can't we just put it right there? That's my house. If you can tie it into that, if you can tie it into that 2-inch line.
We've got a lot of bubbling here.
But it's not that far, you're talking about 50 feet.
Nick's worried about it, we'll move it. We felt putting it here, we can alleviate this problem in a very short time. But if it's a concern of safety that Nick's got, we'll move it over to one of the other properties.
These are general locations, and we're flexible.
That's fine.
The other thing is that we're gonna be monitoring, the state's gonna be out there monitoring, we have a health and safety person here. We're gonna set action levels that well below any risk. If the concentrations of methane, in any zone where people could actually be exposed, which are low action levels, we'll shut the truck off. We'll stop immediately. We'll have continuous monitoring.
That well is not, 21 is not more than, what, 100 feet away? If your radius of influence is no greater than 100 feet, you're gonna have
But
wells.
Mike, this is the consideration that's also being looked at. The bubbling site, and there's also a geopro right there at by Nick's shed, all monitoring points to check the shallow sand. So, wondering how effective would it be if it gets all the way over to ORW and to monitor that geopro well, see if it's effectiveness.
Any problem running a line from Nick's place to the well and running it out? Or that's just,
We
you
can run
said,
it on, you're talking for the 8-hour test?
well, I'm assuming you're gonna leave it there after the 8-hour test, correct?
Well, if we laid a temporary line to run to a vac truck, we'd pull it up after we're done, if that's what it takes. I personally picked this because there's a lot of bubbling, there's a lot of stuff coming out here. But if there's a concern about the vac truck being there, we'll move it.
You just gotta convince that man.
My concern is, you know, if you don't have it vetted to make sure that it doesn't affect the people in that area, then that's fine. But, you know, if you're just talking, well, you know, 10 feet's enough. What the hell, another 10 foot, another 20 foot? How much does that cost?
Nick, would it make you feel better if a man is standing right by the truck? Side of the truck with the
He's standing by the truck.
He might die 20 years from now.
Who is just there because he's getting paid an hourly rate. And he's not invested in this thing. Doesn't mean a thing to me. He's just there on an hourly rate to get a paycheck.
I mean, obviously, if the LEL went up to 50 or 100%, we'd ask the man to step away.
Well, Bob,
But if the man is right there.
you're talking about this gentleman right there, you don't have any problem at all with this. Why don't you allow them access to the property? Don't be telling him it's no problem if you're not ready to do it yourself. You'll do it yourself.
Look, I'm fully.
Okay, I got a question.
I gotta go.
I agree. Come over to talk to me about putting the well down on my property.
I am not just here for a paycheck. I'll tell you that right now.
I didn't say you were. But I'm saying.
I am here to do my damnedest to help the community. that's what we're trying to do. I understand your concerns when you live here. I can't appreciate what you've gone through, because I don't live here. But I can do my damnedest to try to fix the problem, and that's what we're trying to do. If it makes you feel better to move the back truck or move somewhere else, we're gonna do it.
Why can't you extend the pipe on it
We can't,
a bit further
Let
up?
me make a suggestion.
we can run a header.
I think it would be easier for us to locate away from Nick's home. Nick is the one that has most of the issues with what's proposed here, so we will do this away from your home, Nick. Will that be okay? We'll do this elsewhere.
That's what I'm saying.
And see, that's what concerns me, because of people having objections. Y'all are saying that's where you're doing it, because that's where it needs it the most,
No, no,
right?
no.
Because that's the most bubbling right there, you said.
This portion.
That's why you picked that spot.
This phase, not so much. Keep in mind, the reason we picked these 4 sites was, as a set of criteria, we had access, because we have property in that area. We had known level sites or geoprobe wells that we could use to test with as we pull a vacuum. Okay? And they were spatially preferred to cover the whole community. You can see we kind of cover the whole community. Those were the criteria. It wasn't necessarily because we think that's where we're going to get the most gas when we put this system in. It was, how can we get the best data? Our assumption already is we're going to grid the whole community, these wells. Don't confuse the deeper ORW wells with this system. This is a system that will cover the whole community.
I'm not, I just heard Dr. Heacock say he picked that spot because there was a lot of bubbling there.
Right. And
So if that would be a good test place.
That's one of the criteria. See, what we can do is we can, with the truck, we can pull the vacuum and then we can go watch the bubbles and see how long it takes for them to change or go away. And that's a piece of information that we will use then to design the whole system.
I'm just concerned about things not getting done because of objections from residents. You know, and I think we all need to understand that y'all have got to do some of this stuff.
People are uncomfortable, we'll move the location.
Yeah, we'll just move. It's not worth the hassle, because the majority of you folks want this problem to go away. And that's who we're talking to. If we have to move, we'll do that.
These were spotted just because we felt that would be a good place to get the key data we need. We can move them just like moving a dot on the map right now. That's easy. We don't want to get people more anxious than they already are. So that's no problem. And you can communicate with John, you see where the dots are. John's out here every day, you can communicate your concerns and we can move them. That's not a problem. We're out here and we're gonna be out here until this sucker, we get it under control. So, that's where we're at. Next week at the community meeting, I'll probably just show 1 or 2 slides on this. Most community meeting is gonna be on the 3D seismic and some of the subsidence work that Haskell's done. It deals with Bayou Corne and the highway. If you have any more questions, you know where Farrell is, you know where John is, and we talk many times a day, so if you've got another concern, you know the pathway to get the questions to it. If it makes people more comfortable that I come down and we come down and sit down with you, we'll do that. We want people to be comfortable. This is what we gotta do, folks, fix this problem. I wish it didn't have to go this way, but it does. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.